Hey folks, and welcome to episode 31 of the Modern Agile Show. I am super thrilled to be here with my friend Stas Zvinyatskyovsky. I got messed up. Zvinyatskyovsky. I think I got that right.
Yes.
It's Zvinyatskyovsky here together with Kirievsky. We are both from the Ukraine originally. So, I mean, I'm many generations, but you know, I can say this. You're how many?
Yeah, no, I moved here. Yeah, I was born there.
You were born there.
Well, but you know what makes it hard is that the letters in my last name, they rearrange themselves every morning.
Aha,
so I have to learn them every morning.
Okay, well, I seem to pronounce it correctly. Zvinyatskyovsky, I'll say it one more time.
Zvinyatskyovsky.
And we are not drinking vodka today, so that's...
No, there's a question mark here.
Oh, and maybe you're drinking it. We are here excited to talk a lot about some wonderful stories. Stas has incredible stories. He's a very experienced practitioner in Lean and Agile, and he's been helping big companies for years, doing really important work. So where do we start? The tar pit?
Let's start with the tar pit.
Stas told an incredible story that just stuck with me, and I loved it so much that I had to write my own version and get him to approve it, because I wanted to share it. So what did you call it?
So we called it pulling an elephant out of a tar pit.
Pulling an elephant out of a tar pit.
That was a number of years ago.
Yes,
right?
And you're allowed to talk about this, right? Because you talked about this publicly already.
Yeah, so this was Agile 2015. My friend Ed Cray and I, we spoke at Agile 2015 conference. We told the story. We were at Yahoo at the time, and this was our story of transformation. Yahoo.
So now, that time frame was, Yahoo was serious trouble, right?
That's right. As you know, the company actually did not survive. The brand is still there, still serving a lot of very happy users. But we were going through some tumultuous times at the time. Yeah. And so we were very honest about it, and we went through our transformation and talked about it at a very big conference. Mm-hmm. Got a lot of very positive feedback.
And this transformation was not anything boring like a lot of transformations. This was a profound change, in my opinion, and I've been in this field a long time. I call it awful to awesome. And yes, it didn't save the company. However, what they accomplished was absolutely awesome. From where you started, describe a little bit about how bad it was.
Yeah, so all of this is public, and there are videos, and you can go and see the entire 90-minute presentation. But where we started was just people were in constant pain, right? We were releasing quarterly, so about 4 releases per year, struggling, nights and weekends work, just constant death marches. And where we ended up is in a much happier place. The speed was through the roof. I think we were, our time to market was probably the best out there at the end of that transformation. Quality was just amazing. Our production incidents dropped by 80%. But what's more important to me is that the people's lives have changed dramatically.
Yeah.
Right? Instead of chasing bugs nights and weekends, if they told me I went to school for computer science, if they told me that would be my job, I would have reconsidered my choices. Maybe I would.
Oh yeah, it's miserable. Every single day you're fighting bugs. You're working weekends.
Yeah.
You told me a story too that an engineer would come in. They'd say to their manager, "I'm done with my work."
Yes.
And then the manager would say, "Well, great, but we're waiting for the other 59 programmers to integrate their work, and so maybe in several days we'll all have a build."
Yep.
And then they'd do the build finally at the end of the week, and
nothing works.
Nothing works, and then the people would work the weekend and then try again on Monday. It was miserable.
It's miserable. But then where we ended up is just much happier place. Happy people. You walk the halls and people are smiling.
And that was continuous deployment.
And I think continuous delivery was the biggest needle mover for us.
Yes.
Right.
So you guys actually went from just almost no tests and terrible build processes, no integration or continuous integration, just merging hell, to continuous delivery.
Correct. So our motto was no human intervention. This is after the code is authored, reviewed, merged, no human intervention between that and production.
So I would call that continuous deployment myself. Because to continuous delivery, you have to have a human press a button to say, okay, go.
Sure.
Whatever.
Sure.
It doesn't matter. It's very close to being the same thing. So how long did that take from when you started that effort to when you were actually really doing continuous delivery, continuous deployment? I know you said that every single product at Yahoo that was still being touched, meaning that code changes were still being made to it, went on this journey. And at the end, they all were continuously deploying.
Yeah, well, it's amazing that it's 7 years later we're still talking about it, but because it's such a great story. And so the way it started, though, it started with us trying many different things and failing. We just couldn't find our way over the tar pit. And meanwhile, competition is running circles all around the tar pit. And
lots of other search engines that we've heard of, right?
Yeah. And eventually we saw that this continuous integration made a difference for several teams.
CI.
Basic CI. And so just mathematically we figured out that, hey, if we extend it further all the way to production, it will make a bigger difference. And so we tried it on a bigger set of teams, and that was just magical.
Yeah.
Right, and all those iterations probably took a year or two.
Yeah.
Right, and once we got to that point and saw the results, then we decided to go across the company. And the company push we went through several milestones, but the final push to automate took about 9 months.
Okay, and was there resistance to this?
Of course, with any change there is resistance.
So what kind of resistance happened? Because as I recall you saying, there were some people that were fairly dead set against CD, continuous delivery, continuous deployment.
Well, so what we're looking at is a complete cultural change. People's life is changing. The values are changing. Behaviors are changing. The language is changing, right? And the expectation and goals and everything is changing. And so it's scary, right? When you don't know what's on the other side. And there is probably, with any change, and now I'm working with a lot of companies and doing a lot of changes. With any change, there is probably 20-25% of people that can be convinced by doing something new. They're perhaps motivated by doing something new, and they will be there at the starting line waiting, not even waiting for you. And just
early adopters.
Early adopters. Then there's probably another 50% of the companies you can probably convince through your standard program management practices, goals, milestones, and
KPIs.
Constantly following up, right? And eventually you'll get there. And then there are people that will never move unless you tell them you absolutely have to move.
Right. So in taking the elephant out of the tar pit, what did you experience?
Well, so what we experienced is that, except we really didn't have the time to, we started with standard program management practices and we saw the milestones slipping. And so ended up going in changing the approach to being very aggressive, going with short-term aggressive goals.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
which
towards CD or
towards CD, which worked out really well because first of all, you're actually seeing progress every month, but then also it builds confidence in a place for teams that felt like nothing will ever change. Yeah. After the first milestone, they get their hopes up, and then after the second milestones, they believe in themselves.
Right.
And then that made a lot of difference because you could progressively get more and more aggressive and people will respond and they will get motivated. And so I think we saw a lot of resistance early on in the early milestones, but as we got to subsequent milestones, it got progressively easier.
That's great. So early on, it might have taken people were a little bit more, as I recall, you were saying there were some people that said, no way in hell am I going to do CD.
Yeah.
It's crazy talk, it's stupid, we'll never do it. And those were the major resistors.
Yeah, and sometimes the most the easiest teams to deal with are the teams in trouble, right? Because they're very open to other ideas. And if a team is really efficient in doing what they're doing and they're meeting their goals, there is really no good incentive for them to change. And even though you're promising them, hey, you'll be 5 times faster and your quality is going to be so much better, there is really no factors, external factors that force them to change.
Right. Yeah, so I think the things to highlight here that I see differently from most transformations, or not all, this particular transformation was dealing with a company in a perilous business situation, a real need to aggressively make changes so that the company can be more nimble, more agile from a business perspective. Yeah. Getting to continuous delivery, continuous deployment was a key part of that. And so you had to be aggressive in moving in that direction.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
And it took a couple of years, I think, eventually to get all the systems onto.
Well, the final push was 9 months.
9 months, yeah.
We probably were at 25% before that, maybe even lower.
Yeah.
And we were very binary too, because we would say you're either there, you're either fully automated or you're not.
Right.
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 So that was also a very critical decision point for us, whether to accept 95% done or 99% done.
Yeah.
Which in my experience, 99% done means
you've got a ways to go.
You're not done. You have ways to go.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome. So today you're working with all kinds of companies, helping them with transformations. What are you finding out there?
Well, so I'm now with Accenture Solutions like you, and I'm working with a lot of companies to help them with their concept to cash value stream.
Yes.
So anything starting from architecture, so modern architectures, decoupled architectures, reactive architectures, to operating models, roles and responsibilities, organizational setup, to coding, to delivery, to operations, to agile and learning processes on top. And so we find companies at different levels of maturity, right? We still have companies that are just now realizing that software engineering cannot be ignored.
Yes.
You know, for many years, you know, if I'm a traditional company, I've been treating IT as my back office.
Yes.
They're the people that run, you know, my cash registers and email systems. And then IT became an enabler for those companies, and now it is their business.
Yeah.
Right. And really, there is no reason to separate yourself from companies here in Silicon Valley.
Right.
Right. So when people ask me, "Hey, but I get it. It works for Facebook or it works for Netflix, but I'm different." But the reality is that everybody is a software company now.
Right. Mark Andreessen's software is eating the world.
Yeah.
So we know that we have to be on top of that. We have to run the company as if it were a software development company.
Yeah, absolutely. And so companies are in different points in their journey.
Yes.
Some are a little bit more mature, some are just starting and going through the same struggles as we've all gone through. And so the good news is that you can learn from all the mistakes that we've made in the past 20 years.
Yes.
And you can get there faster and more efficiently and cheaper. But it also requires some, learning.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're taking a lean concept from concept to cash. That's what you're going in with to try to, of course, shorten that time, that lead time.
Yes.
And but I think you do bring a very technical and software engineering perspective to it, saying, hey, if we're really going to do this, shorten the concept to cash, we'd better get our software development practices in order.
Well, yes. So the way I view it is, if you look at concept to cash value stream,
yes,
we used to optimize it for efficiency, right? From late 19th century with Frederick Taylor, right? And we got really good at it, right? And it worked for us for many years in software engineering, until we figured out. Actually, to me, the biggest change that happened was the internet, because you could go onto production server, modify a line of code or a character, and it's in production immediately.
Right.
As opposed to, in the 80s, we used to ship software on disks. And how often can you do that? Maybe 3 times a year.
Right.
And so now that you can do this so quickly and your batch is so small, you can actually start to experiment and learn. And we have companies that are learning fast, moving fast, and eating everybody else's lunch.
Yes.
And so the cost of inefficiency is now outweighed by the cost of delay.
Yes.
And so for many, many companies, they need to figure out how to move faster. And so instead of optimizing that entire concept to cash value stream for efficiency, you can now optimize it for flow of value.
Yes.
Right. And once you say that and you start applying theory of constraints, what's stopping my flow of value? Number one is coupling. Right. And coupling takes multiple forms. So it's technical coupling. So that's why decentralized decoupled architecture. Then it's execution coupling. So we talk about decentralized organization, which brings in a lot of decentralized type of governance. How do you govern? What's the operating model in a decentralized organization? Now you start looking at these decentralized units. What's stopping them? What's slowing them down? And part of it is like throwing stuff over the wall and separation of duties. Another part is just software delivery is slow and error prone, and so you start automating it. And then you start building quality, and all of these traditional lean concepts come into play. And so now we've been talking about DevOps and continuous delivery and Agile, and all of these were disparate disciplines, but now you can actually, now they come together in this overall concept of lean, overall paradigm of lean software engineering.
Yes, yes.
Right, and they start making sense.
Yes, makes a lot of sense. We've found finding lean concepts are so applicable to any Agile initiative, whether it's in the software field or not. And as you're saying, you're optimizing the value flow. You're optimizing learning. How quickly can we learn? You know, Modern Agile says, experiment and learn rapidly.
Yep.
You know, and if we can optimize our learning in this part here, then we're going to be able to deliver value far faster.
Yep.
So these principles are sort of leading us in that direction. This to us, this horizontal part here, we call it, you know, this is the Kaizen. This is the continuous improvement. Yep. And we look at this part here, the make people awesome and make safety a prerequisite, more along the lines of how are we helping our customers? How are we respecting them? How are we respecting each other? So that's what we look at. But lean is alive and well all these decades later, even though it started in the automotive field.
Right, where you actually knew what you were building up front.
Right, exactly. It's a changed world. Well, hey, thank you so much for coming. This has been a pleasure talking with you, and I hope to have you back sometime. So
it's been great. Thank you so much.
Okay. Over and out. If you like this show, please share with others, and we look forward to seeing you on more episodes soon.